Okay, we finished going through all of the symbols and we discussed how things work for all of the operations we're doing in logic. Let's put it to use. So, translating. Quite frequently, translating behavior has two different components. You have syntactic translation, where you translate literally word to word to word. And then you have semantic translation, where the goal is to translate the idea of the sentence. An interesting anecdote. In the beginning days of automatic language translation, the goal was to translate a phrase back and forth between two languages to see what actually came through clearly and what didn't. So there was an English to Russian translation program, and the goal was to translate "the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." What does that mean? Semantically, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Emily?
You want to, but your body may not be able to. Like if you want to walk, but you have two broken legs, you want to be able to do that.
Even if you don't have them broken, I'm worn out, I've been running all day, I'm not going anywhere on these rubber bands, right? After repeatedly translating the sentence to Russian and English back and forth about 15, 20 times, the end result was the vodka is good, but the steak not so much. Spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So there's a very distinct difference between literal translation and our semantic translation. Most of what we do in formal logic is to strip semantics. Our goal is to come up with a syntactic translation. So let me see what I've got in a sentence like this. Oh, if I write it down correctly. You can graduate only if you have completed the requirements of major and you don't owe money to the university and you don't have any overdue library books. All right. If I want to turn this into a logical statement, a sequence of propositional variables with some of the symbols we used last week, I want to figure out what this says logically. So let's go through and label some propositional variables. What in here is a statement that is either true or false as a phrase in and of itself? So every time you run into a logical connective, like one of our operators, stop. Emily.
You can graduate.
There you go. I'll call that one G. You can graduate. Only if is one of our connectives. That's one of the ones that goes with the arrow. Roman.
Completed the requirements of your major.
You have completed the requirements of your major. M. Major. Make sense? No, I don't want to use that because the next one is about money. Let's use M for money. Let's call this one R for requirements. But the next sentence is an and, so I'm going to stop there. You don't owe money to the university. Okay, now we have to make a decision. What is the variable we want to use? You do owe money or you don't? Your choice. You can decide which way you want the sentence to read. That changes the set of symbols you're going to use. Seth, I saw you start.
I was gonna say, just do you owe money to the university.
Okay, so right here, I'm gonna put an underline there, and I'm gonna go M equals you owe money to the university. That ends here. And, all right, then this is my last one. Same call, right? I have to decide whether the don't is part of the sentence variable I'm using or not. And if I want to be consistent, let's go with B for books. You have overdue library books. Okay. So this giant sentence has now been reduced to 4 variables: G, R, and B. I see ands, and I see only if. I need you to go back into the textbook or to look at the table we mentioned last week for the only if, because only if goes with the arrow. And my question is, it's going to be G arrow, or is it going to be arrow G?
Suppose it goes both ways.
That's if and only if. There's only one up there. That's not if and. Ah, the arrow that goes both ways is if and only if. Ooh. G arrow. Is G the if part? Yeah, well, when I write only it, that's the problem. G if something, then this would be the antecedent. But G only if makes G the antecedent. Page 7, I believe, in our text, has the giant list of equivalent phrases. P arrow Q, P only if Q. So when I see the phrase only if, the stuff that's before only if is the antecedent, the hypothesis. So we're going to have this start G arrow. G arrow what? Stuff. Seth?
R and not M and not B.
R and not M and not B. But I want all of that to be decided as one piece, right? So that at least needs parentheses like this. Because otherwise the arrow is done afterwards, that would be okay, but which and? I really should now ask the next question. Do I need another set of parentheses in there?
No, it's all the and statements. It doesn't matter which way you want.
Because all the ands are equivalent, it doesn't matter which order those appear in. We could do R and M, sorry, R and not M, then and B. We could do not M, not B, and then R. Doesn't matter which order we do these three in. I would like you to show that that's actually true. At some point, we should convince ourselves that wherever we put the parentheses, it really doesn't matter. We'll do that later. Does this make sense? Because now if I have these statements in any other language, I know exactly how to translate this sentence back, right?
Do we need that parentheses?
Technically, no. Again, order of operations, tell me to do all the ands first, then do the arrow. I'm being pedantic here. More questions? There are places where it is our benefit to have those parentheses. There are places where it is necessary to have those parentheses. It depends on the way in which the phrase is written. The following is black letter law from the Constitution. You are eligible to be president of the United States only if you are at least 35 years old, comma, were born in the USA, or at the time of your birth, both of your parents were citizens, comma, and you have lived in the US at least 14 years. Article 1. Interestingly enough, several court cases have been raised in the past 20 years over some of these particular clauses. The "you were born in the United States" was challenged when John McCain ran for office in 2016. No, 2012, sorry. 8?
Yeah.
8, wonderful, thank you. Who was it up against in 12? I forgot. Thank you. So, the reason that was raised was because Mitt Romney was born overseas on an American military base. An American military base part of the USA? It is officially, according to the Supreme Court. Foreign military hospitals, United States territory in other countries. Ramstein, I'm sorry, Ramstein, the Air Force Base is US territory. A carrier at sea is US territory. All right. I need propositional variables. What up here?
You are eligible to be president of the USA.
That's either true or false. I'll use eligible. We'll call that E. Only if is a logical connector. And from what we did last time, we already can say we know how the translation into symbols is going to start. How's the translation going to start? E arrow. The rest of it. That's talking about age. A. Comma. I don't know what that comma represents yet. We're born in the United States is either true or false, yes? So there's another piece I can use. This clause, no noun. That sentence, no verb. This clause, no noun, because this clause is still referring to you. Okay? Born, B. Or, I got an or, so I know that that hangs together. At the time of your birth, your parents were citizens. This is about your parents. Great. Comma. And. Aha. Okay. How many of you online have seen this bull crap about the Oxford comma? That's what we've just run into. Thing, comma, and. A lot of people leave out that first comma, or the second comma. Whether or not that comma is there is, again, something that came up in a court case. Literally, less than 5 years ago. A packing plant had packing and loading without the comma between them as things that were eligible for overtime. Are those considered separate activities or single activity? Without the comma, that's a single activity. So packing the truck and loading the truck is one thing, not two separate things. And you have lived in the US at least 14 years. There's an and. And the fact that this Oxford comma is there means that this comma that we didn't know up here, this comma is an and. Lived in the United States. What are we going to use for this? L for lived, fine. I always get in trouble using L, so I'm going to use a lowercase l. I'll write it in cursive, L. Otherwise, it just looks weird whether or not it's a straight one or whatever. I use that. So, E arrow what?
A and begin parentheses,
Keep talking.
B or P, end parentheses, and L.
Are the parentheses necessary? Absolutely. Here, order of operations works against us, right? Ands and ors were done in opposite orders. I want to make sure I'm doing the or before the and, not the other way around. So I absolutely need that set of parentheses. If I were going to be anal retentive, I'd put one around the whole clause there and say this whole thing is the and, is the consequent. So far, so good. That same 2008 election is what started the birther movement with this question for President Obama. Okay, let's go a step in a different direction. I can think of logical behaviors, logical variables, propositional variables, as specifications.
For your propositional variables, does it matter uppercase, lowercase, any of the letters? Is there any restrictions on
As
it?
long as you labeled what it is, I prefer you not use capital T or capital F because those stand for true and false. Other than that, go to town. I actually read a formal logic textbook that was written in Greek. I can't read Greek to save my ass, but I could follow all the symbols because they use the same symbol. All I had to do was translate, well, G, what does G mean? Well, gamma. All right, what's that mean? I don't know what the symbols are. You could use any letters you like. Hell, write this in Klingon. If you speak Cinderil, use that. Specifications. Who's allowed to be in this course?
Students enrolled in the university that have paid the tuition.
You can't be enrolled if you haven't paid, but you are enrolled and you haven't paid yet, right? If your loans are still coming in, so the payment's kind of weird. But there's another requirement you have to be in this course.
Is it California?
Mm-hmm. You either have to be in it or have already passed it, right? So I can think of that as a logical requirement. You have passed Calc 1 or are currently registered for Calc 1. A parenthetical, just like this one. And you're a current student, and your tuition will be paid by the appropriate deadline, etc. That's what allows you to be in this course. I am going to have a meeting tomorrow afternoon. Yay. With the School of Business and Technology, all the faculty and the staff in the School of Business and Technology. Who has to be there? Who has to be there? Who should be there? I can make a set of specifications. You're going to run a particular program. Is the computer you are sitting in front of right now, or the computer you have in your bag, capable of running that program? I don't know. What's the requirements on that program, right? I want to upgrade to the latest version of Power BI. You can't do that. You're on a Mac. You can only use Power BI on the web if you're on a Mac. I want to run the latest Minecraft mods. Sorry, those are only written for 1.16, and you have 1.14. You're out of luck. Oh no, they're rewriting this pack for 1.20. I'll be fine. Who knows? Set of specifications are consistent. I've got a new piece of terminology here. A set of specifications are consistent if they do not contain conflicting propositions that result in a contradiction. Okay, but what's a contradiction?
Something that negates the other sentence, like you can't have them both be true at the same time.
So how would I discover whether or not I have a contradiction? I would need a truth table. So my goal is to have a truth table. And in a truth table, the result is a contradiction if it is always false. Now, what that means is that my specifications are consistent if at least once in the process of doing my truth table, my last column has at least one true in it. I'm good. At least one. The difficulty is figuring that out. I'm going to cheat. I stole this one directly from the textbook. Are the following specifications consistent? The router can send packets to the edge system only if it supports the new address space. For the router to support the address space, it is necessary that the latest software release be installed. The router can send packets to the edge system if the latest software release is installed. Router does not support the new address space. I have 4 logical sentences here. I need to turn them into symbols. Figure out, is there any set of values for those variables that makes this true? All 4 of them at the same time. So the first thing I need to do is I need to go through here and start labeling. What are my propositional variables? So let's look at the sentences and try and just decode things that could be true, things that could be false. First sentence, the router can send packets to the edge system only if. Aha. There's a logical break, an operator. So the router can send packets to the system. That's a propositional variable. P. I can send packets. I like sending packets. What's the next one? Only if, that's the operator, it supports the new address space. What's the it here? Because I see later, the router does not support the address space. Okay, good. So then supporting the address space, the router supports the address space is either true or false. But that's a propositional variable. That's the first sentence. I can figure out how to write it in a minute. Those are the variables in the first sentence. For the router to support the new address space, that's part of A. It is necessary. Okay, it is necessary. It is necessary. Page 7 again. That big table of arrow things, that's part of an arrow. The latest software release be installed. So I need to know if the latest software is on the router. The router can send packets if the latest software release, those are the same variables used in a different sentence, right? And then the last one, the router does not support the new address space. The router supports the address space as a variable we've already decided on. So now I need to start translating 4 sentences into symbols. Let's start with the first sentence. Again, grab your books, page 6. Let's go look at that table, or page 7. Look at the table of equivalencies for the arrow, because the words here are the piece that are going to piss me off. The first sentence uses only if, just like our previous sentences did. So what is the appropriate statement in symbols for that? P arrow. Well, let's finish it. It supports the new address space. P arrow A. Beautiful. P arrow A. The next sentence. For the router to support the new address space, it is necessary that the latest software be installed. All right. It is necessary. I start looking at it is necessary. And I see 2 versions here. And notice that the word for goes with the antecedent. It goes with P, 4P, 4P, right? So the way our sentence is written, for what? For the router to support the address space. For A. Is A the first part, the hypothesis, or the conclusion? There, the sentence is now at the bottom too. Is it A arrow or is it arrow A? Because in both of the versions on page 7, the word for went with the first part. Whenever I see necessary, 4P. That's the first. So it's A arrow. A arrow, what? A arrow, S. Third sentence. The router can send packets to the edge system if the latest software release is installed. They put the word if in front of the piece it applies to. So if the latest software is installed, then the router can send packets. That means if S arrow. Last but by no means least, what was the last sentence up here? You'll notice there's no if then, that's one and only one variable. It doesn't do it, that's a negation. Not A. So what I need to do at this point is build a truth table. There are all four of my sentences. 3 variables, how many rows am I going to have? 8, right? It's 2 times 2 and then 2 again. I doubled it each time. So I'm going to end up with 8 rows. There they are in my quote-unquote standard order. I need to know, are any of those 8 rows going to result in all 4 sentences being true? Because really, this is a giant and. I need this true, and this, and this, and this for my specification to all work. So I start filling all this out. Well, that's not going to work. If A is true, well, then not A is false. As a matter of fact, that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4 right away, yeah? So really, I should only worry about these 2. No, we screwed up there. P arrow A, T arrow F. That's not going to work. Same thing here. Now I'm starting to worry, but there we go. It is possible for all of these things to work at the same time. But it only works when we haven't installed the system, the software. The router can send the packets. So I need all 3 of our original variables to end up having F's in them, right? So no, this router can't send packets. This router doesn't support the new address space. And the software is not up to the latest version, but we can still do all these 4 things. Bizarre, isn't it? The whole idea of determining whether or not a set of specifications is consistent is a hardware check for your software. It's a software check for your code. Did I set this up? I posted this. This is on our Canvas page as a PDF file exactly like this. So if you didn't catch every bit of it, if you didn't write it all down, that's fine. It's up there for you. Questions? Yes, sir.
So do we see the contradiction? Is that what the all F is showing us?
No. I'm looking at these 4 on this side. Is there any place where all the and statement, really on the end of this should be P arrow A and A arrow S and S arrow P and not A. That column. Looks like that. Aha! It's not a contradiction.
Massive, like, all the sentences that we had, which ones are the variables? Because I know the for statement in the middle is throwing me off, because I know like it supports the new address, and then at the bottom it says the router does not support the new address, so those 2 are together, and then, yeah.
The one with the for the router to support the new address space, it is necessary that the latest software release be installed, period, right? That's a sentence in and of itself. From this word to this word. So I have to go through that and I have to say for, well, is this thing true or not? For P, Q is necessary. It is necessary for P. Aha. It is necessary. That's why I broke each of them down individually. That's the one that pissed me off the first time too. Now, the fact that we have the last sentence that says the router doesn't support the new address space. Okay, I've got an old router. That doesn't end my consistency. Make it better or worse?
I'm trying to highlight them for the clarity.
Okay, let me go back up, here and I'll do that. We have the router can send packets to the edge system, check. Right? Only if, that's part of the propositional variable, it's not the part of the variable, it supports the new address space. Click. For the router to support the new address space, that's the same one we just wrote. So those two match. Then it is necessary that the latest software be installed. The router can send packets. If the latest software is installed, there's the same one again. See, I'm color coding them just like you want to. The router can send packets to the edge system. That's this one. Click. And then the router does not support the new address space. That's this color. And I left out the word not from the sentence. Because up here I used it positively. So down here, that's why the negation shows up on it there. More questions? When you do a Google search or any web search algorithm you want to use, I don't care what website it is, all of them use our logical operators. So if you want to use the internet, you can put items in with logical connectors. I was searching for an email this morning about the cybersecurity course 125. And so I asked my email, hey, find me anything that mentions CY 125. But sometimes we start with S, right? In the catalog description, course numbers all start with S, SCY. So I said, find either of them. We call it CY 125 or SCY 125. Find, quote, CY 125 or SCY 125. And we did the whole search. I want to find any mention of SMA205 and Emily, I'm going to pick on you, your name. So I look for both those things. I put an and in between them. I find any email I sent that's got your name somewhere in it and this course number somewhere. And that'll go back all the way to last year. Go back however long my Gmail fits. I don't care where you're searching. Every single web search algorithm uses our logical connectors. And they use them in the database of things they scraped off the internet, the pointers that they listed, the search engine optimization terms. I can make my web searches better simply by writing my search terms in logical operators. Games. Anybody want to play? I wish I was lying. This is nothing but ands, ors, and nots. All I have to do is remember the specific cases that allow me to fill in a number. What numbers can go in this blank? Well, each row must contain the numbers from 1 to 9 uniquely. Each column must contain the numbers 1 to 9 uniquely. And each of the 9 small 3x3s must contain the numbers 1 to 9 uniquely. If I count it out right, I believe there are 729 distinct and or combinations. But all I have to do is go, all right, what can I use? What can't I use? What gets filled in there? Can't be a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, or an 8. That was easy. That's a 9. Ta-da! This whole exercise is nothing but a giant logic sequence. Now, what happens is as the clues get sparser and sparser, as the number of things get smaller and smaller and less determined, it isn't as easy or as obvious, though I know what it is. There is a national puzzle competition. It's run by a guy by the name of Will Shortz, who is the puzzle editor for the New York Times. He also happens to be on NPR every Saturday. The Sudoku competition goes from level 1 to level 9, but there are 12 puzzles in increasing order of difficulty. Any idea what the world record is for finishing all 12 puzzles? It's under 11 minutes. I can't even write down all the numbers in less than 30 seconds. They solve the easy one in less than 12. I can't even write that fast. But all they're doing is nested ands and ors. A guy by the name of Raymond Smullyan wrote a huge number of puzzle books in which he talked about puzzles very similar to Lewis Carroll's. Lewis Carroll. Remember him? Alice in Wonderland? You know what Lewis Carroll's day job was? Lewis Carroll was Alice's math tutor. All of Alice in Wonderland is an example for this class. Cat without a grin I've seen, but a grin without a cat? A sentence and its converse. Smullyan wrote about the land of knights and knaves. Knights always tell the truth, knaves always lie. Who's who? You're greeted by two people, they tell you two sentences. Who's who? These are the ones that make you beat your head against the wall, right? Every knight and knave puzzle is a truth table. I, on the other hand, as I said to you last week, I learned this in a very different fashion. I learned this in electronics. Page 22. These are the symbols used in circuit design. A not, an or, and an and. The two things coming in from the left side in the second and third picture, the one coming in, that's a wire with a voltage on it. If the voltage is a low voltage, our ground state, that's a false. If the voltage is high, that's a true. This is a physical piece of silicon that only lets voltage out when there's voltage on either one, an or statement. This one only lets it out when it's on both of them. CMOS, CMOS chips, the physical chips in your computers, in your phones, CMOS, copper, metal, oxide, substrate. They're physically made of chemically changed and artificially lined up pieces of silicon. And all they do is act like these three things. I worked for a pacemaker company. Summer of 19. I was a summer intern. My job was to organize the parts cabinet. The parts cabinet was about 2/3 the size of this room. And had such things as box of assorted computer chips. And I wish I was joking when I said this was about a foot cube box with those little black things with the little spider legs on them thrown in randomly. They were not sorted in any fashion. I had no idea what the hell they were. Hunks of wire of assorted lengths and types. I spent 3.5 weeks, put everything away where everything was, labeled the whole 9 yards. Problem is they're giving me an 8-week contract. What were they going to do with me for next month? My boss, Ilio said to me, I want you to help with the defibrillator project. At the time, and you see the automatic defibrillators here, somebody collapses, you put the paddle here and the paddle here, you wait a minute, and it does all the rest of the work. People whose heart goes out of rhythm easily need one of those a lot. They physically implant them into the person. Instead of 2 paddles, you have a piece of mesh about that big around. One is sewn to the top of the heart, the other is sewn to the bottom of the heart. Because at the top of the heart, between the 2 atria, is an electric node that sends a signal to tell the atria to compress. At the bottom of the heart, under the ventricles, is an electrical node that tells the ventricles to compress. So instead of your heart doing all the electrical work on its own, we would go and it would make your heartbeat in the right rhythm. That's why your heartbeat has 2 noises. The soft compression of the atria and the loud compression from the ventricle. It's the same reason your blood pressure has 2 numbers. Lower one, higher one. Problem. I'm going to sew a metal patch to the top of your heart. How do I get there? Not only do I have to open the chest, I have to cut the breastbone away from one side of the ribs and pry it open so I get to the top of your heart. I apologize to those of you with sensitive stomachs who ate lunch. This required usually 3 weeks of recovery for the bones to knit back together before we could let you out of the hospital. This sucks. It's expensive. The goal of the pacemaker company that summer was to unroll that patch, not on the top of the heart, but inside the right atrium. From inside, put it down a blood vessel, unroll it, and shove it up against the top of the muscle. And then we could send the shock from the inside rather than the outside. Because we can get to that blood vessel through the descending vena cava, which is under your belly, not under your ribs. There were 4 wires involved. Each wire was insulated. All of those wires were wrapped in a larger piece of insulation inside a single tube so it could be fed to the heart properly. This is going to bend and move and flex. I need to make sure the insulation stays on all the wires as it bends and moves and flexes. Because what happens if the wires are not insulated properly? What happens is the electricity goes like that, goes to the wrong place on your heart, and does no good. They gave me the chore of testing 6 wires. Here you go, here are your 6 braided wires, figure out how to make sure the insulation works. I sent a pulse down wire 1. If 1 and 2 lit up, stop. If 1 and 3 lit up, stop. If 1 and 4 lit up, stop. I sent a pulse down wire 2. I already checked 2 and 1. Let's check 2 and 3, 2 and 4. Send a pulse down wire 3, check 3 and 4. And I said, okay, I wrote out a little bit of logical statements, and I said, this is how we're gonna do this. And I walked back over to Elio, I said, here's the program, what do I code it on? He goes, code hell, go build it with the chips you just put away. I got a clock. I got an AND gate. I got 6 AND gates. I put them in sequence in an OR. If any of them lit as I sent the pulses down the wires, it would stop and light up 2 lights. Where did I get the computer chips? Come on. Texas Instruments has a manual, shows me each and every single chip they design. Shows me what gates are on it, what pins are the high and the low, which pins are the inputs, which pins are the outputs. I wired those suckers up, built it, it was about this big. We tested the first one. Yeah, this does what we wanted. I made 5 more, they were about the size of that playing cards. For the next 3 weeks, we ran the voltages, stuck the wires in a tank of water, to simulate the blood, and moved one end to flex the wires to see if it would break. 3 different people got this implantable defibrillator eventually. It saved lives. People, that's all I did was ands and ors, and it saved lives. I like this idea. This seems useful. So I look at a complicated circuit. What does it say? What does it do? Translate this from a circuit design to a logical statement, or the other way. And then I go build it. I don't know if you're going to do hardware design or not. That's what it's about at the circuit level. Thank you all for indulging me. I will see you all on Friday. Please note, Wednesday. Please note that you have homework assignment to do, right? That's on paper here. And we'll see you all then. If you've got questions, come bug me in the Enrichment Center.